In this video, we'll be looking into the important concepts of first module of FSD subject. So I have considered the model question paper, I've looked into internal paper and generated these important topics. Okay, so let's start from the first topic, that is web frameworks and its features. So this could be asked for 10 marks, or if just web frameworks is asked, it could be asked for 5 marks. So starting from the definition, web frameworks is a set of resources and tools. So web frameworks are a set of resources and tools which are used to build websites, handle websites, create APIs and all of that. So used by software developers to build and manage web applications, web services, as well as to develop application programming interfaces. So that's what I told. So they help the developers to build applications that can run on well-known technology stacks like MERN, Mean, LAMP, Django, again being one of the technology stack. Okay, so remember like 3 to 4 technology stacks. Okay, it'll be easy to write. So then we have, most frameworks provide wide range of features and functionality that help in streamline application development. So here, looking at the features, first we have is the templates. So application templates for presenting info within the browser. Then we have the programming environment for scripting the flow of information. By providing an environment, we can script like the flow of information sequences. Then we have the APIs for accessing the backend data resources. Then we have code and libraries. From code libraries, we can use the like whichever libraries are present, we can use them and make it short code. Like instead of writing lengthy codes, you can make use of that, right? Then we have quality assurance. So quality assurance and debugging support is again a feature of web framework. Further, looking at the advantages, first we have is faster and efficient application development. So here this is less code and reuse. Then we have when we use web framework, it becomes easy because we have lesser errors and lesser bugs. Then we have better performance, reliability and easy maintenance. And along with that, we have continuous improvement, better security. So web frameworks are distinguished by their approach to application architecture. Many web development frameworks are based on MVC architecture. We'll look into this further. Some might be MVVM, that is model view model, or it could be push based architecture and so on. So this was about web frameworks. Looking at a few more features we have here. So the first one is routing. So routing is you are mapping the URLs to some specific function or class. Okay. Then we have HTTP request handling. So from we being the client, we request some content from the server, right, from the website. So this is again handled by the web framework. Then HTTP response generation. When request is arised, the request has to be handled. The request has to be handled and a response should be generated to the request. And this response should be again transferred to the client, to us, right? So that response could be HTML templates or any other data format. Okay, so that is HTML response generation. Then we have template engine. So web frameworks provide a template engine through which like developers can generate dynamic templates easily. Then we have database interaction. Next we have is the database interaction. So by using modules and libraries, we can interact with the database. Like here we come across the concept of object relational mapping. So you'll be studying this further. Then we have security. So in web frameworks, it provides security to the developers and addressing the common security concerns like we have cross-site scripting, prevention and session management. We should make sure that the session management is secured and all of that. Then we have the session management. In session management, there are many mechanisms used for managing the user sessions, storing the session data onto the server, using client-side cookies to maintain the session rate and all. Then we have the user authentication. User authentication means the web frameworks make sure that not everyone can access the data. Not everyone can access the application resources. Only the ones who have designated roles or permissions can only access the data. So this was about web frameworks and its features. So if they ask for 10 marks, you should write all these points. Okay. Next we have the Django FSD architecture. So this may not be asked, but then yeah, as we are studying Django, we should have a basic understanding of what it is. Okay. So Django FSD architecture, full stack development architecture. Django is a high-level Python web framework that enables rapid development of secure, scalable and maintainable web applications. So here in backend, we have the model layer, view layer, controller, URL routing, middleware. And in front end, we have the templates, static file sharing, integration with like React.js, Angular and other softwares. In database comes the PostgreSQL, MySQL, SQLite and Oracle. So this was about the Django FSD architecture. So Django can come in the back end as well as in the front end. So it is like connecting these two, okay, as well as the database also. So this was about the Django FSD architecture. Let's move further, look into the next topic we have is MVC design pattern. MVC design pattern, this is a must question. So this could be asked for 5 or 10 marks. Depending on the question, you should write the answer. Okay. So MVC is a software architecture plan framework or a framework that separates into 3 logical components. One is model, view, and controller. Okay. So each architectural component is built to handle specific development aspect of the application. So features of MVC is like clear separation. We have full control over the HTML and URLs. It is powerful URL mapping component, and it supports test-driven development. So by using MVC, we can clearly segregate the business part, the UI part, and the input logic. Okay. Then looking at this diagram, we have a person from the client side is requesting the controller to access certain data. So this controller will contact the model. So this model will further fetch the data from the database and then return it back to the controller. Now in controller, now that it has got the response, it will deliver the data to the view. Now from views, it is depicted to the user through like it could be images or text data or any other HTML templates and so on. So that is how MVC design pattern works. So we have controller here, model here, and views here. Controller is used to bridge the gap between views and model. Controller takes the request from the user and forwards it to the model part. Now model is used to interact with the backend database. So backend will fetch the data from the database then and return the response to the controller. And views part is used to show the output to the users. Okay, view shows the output to the users. That is presentation layer. View can be called as presentation layer. Looking at the components here, components of MVC, first we have this controller. So controller bridges the gap between model and view. It processes all business logic and incoming requests. Yes. Then view part is the presentation layer, the UI logic of application. It displays the data in human readable form. Like it could be web pages, mobile application screen, or UI component. Then we have the model part. In model part, data related to logic and business logic of application is stored in model part. So model represents data and manages core functionality and of data. So this was about the definition of MVC. Looking at the advantages, the first one we have is testability. So MVC supports test-driven development. That is, it works well for like large applications where many developers and testers are working. So without we can test the components individually without affecting the other component. That is, here all the classes and objects are independent of each other. That is testability. Flexibility is again as I told, so we can test separately. Okay, and if I have to change a certain part of the application, I can do it very easily. It is very flexible. Then we have reusability. That is, I can use the same logic part again to develop further new application. Maintainability is again, these things are pretty easy to maintain as like they can be extended very easily. Coming to the disadvantages part, firstly, it is difficult to read, understand the model. Then it is not suitable for building smaller applications, and like there is insufficiency of data access in the view part. So we have complexity also, overhead, and learning curve. Again, this is again a disadvantage. Increased file count. There are many files which we have to create in order to access the MVC design and MVC architecture. Then we have potential for over engineering. When you can do a particular application, when you can create a particular application in simpler terms, why do you go with a complex thing? Then we have inefficiency of data. So these are the advantages and disadvantages of MVC design pattern. If they ask this, write this. If they ask this for 10 marks, so make sure you write these components part, and along with this, I hope you all know the Hello World program. So make sure that you write the view part, model part, that is the URL part, and the view part for this particular question. Okay, so we'll move further. Next topic. Now we'll look into the class-based views. Along with views, even class-based views is important. So object-oriented way to define the views, yes, and it makes it easier to reuse and organize the code, yes. Along with that, Django provides various generic class-based views for common tasks. So this was about the introduction part. Let's look into the code, views.py. So from Django.views import view. So here I am importing the view class from Django.views. After that, I am also importing the HTTP response from HTTP. Okay. Next, I have class myViews view. So here I am creating a new class named myView that inherits from the views class. After that, def get self comma request. So this line defines a method called get within the myView class. Next, I am returning the HTTP response hello world. Looking at the URL part here, I have from django.url importing the path, and along with the path I am also importing the home, like from dot views import home. So this line imports the home view from the views model in the current directory only. Next, I have URLs is equal to path. This is the empty string which I am declaring here. After that, the second argument is home.asView. So it refers to the home view which we have imported before. Okay. After that, we have name is equal to home. That is, we are specifying the URL name. Okay. And this is how we are importing the home view. So this was about class-based views. Let's look further. Now let's look into the evolution of Django. So it was created in 2003 by these two people, Adrian Holovati and Simon Willison, while working for a newspaper company in Kansas. So it was built initially to maintain the website's content. Okay, so it was BSD licensed in July 2005. Then it gained popularity due to batteries included approach. So it provides a set of tools to build web applications with DRY principles. Then the growth in the Django community happened through the invention of plugins and tutorials. So many Django versions were released from 1.0 to 5.0. So it provides a long-term support, that is, it provides stability and maintenance updates. It has stable code base for projects. New features are provided in this on a regular basis. It supports for complex database queries and improved handling of static files and media. So along with this, as the Django is evolving, it has active community and ecosystems. So there are multiple libraries coming up. There are third-party libraries, tools, and resources. Along with this, Django is again simple, flexible, scalable, and popular choice. So if they ask about evolution of Django, so make sure you write all these points. And if they ask about specific features, be it the dry principles or battery included approach, make sure you expand it and write properly. And next, moving on, we have the views part. So understanding the definition of views. So Python function that takes web request and returns a web response. Yeah. So views are the response. Response can be generated, can be web page contents, that is HTML, or redirect to another page, or it could be error also, or it could be XML document or image or anything. So the view itself contains whatever arbitrary logic is necessary to return that response. Looking at one more definition. So views is a Python function used to perform business logic and return the response to the user. We have seen this in MVC definition, right? So this was about the views part. If they ask define views, you can write these points. Okay. Now we look into the project structure. So firstly, we create a project. In project directory, we have these many different files. So the first one is manage.py. So it is a command line utility help to interact with the Django project. Then we have settings.py. It has all the configuration details about the project. So if I have to update any database and all, I should do it in the settings.py. Then we have urls.py, that is used to map the URL paths to the view of application. Then we have the WSGI. So this is web server gateway interface. It provides an entry point for WSGI compatible servers. Then we have asgi.py, that is asynchronous server gateway interface used for asynchronous applications. Then we have under this project directory, when we create an application, apps, we'll be looking into models, views, URL, template, and migration. We'll discuss this further. Okay. So now let's look into project creation, execution, and commands. So firstly, we have installation of Python and Django and any code editor. So make sure that you have installed Python, pip install Python, then pip install Django. Check out the versions, pip version, Python version, Python M, Django version to get the updated versions. Then installation of virtual environment tool to create isolated Python environment. So it is used to avoid conflict between the projects. That is pip install virtual env. Next, we create a new directory for project, Django project, and navigate to it through command prompt. Then we create virtual environment by running. So we are creating a PyLab, that is a directory. Along with that, we are changing the directory, changing the path to cd PyLab. After that, we are creating the virtual environment env. Env is the name of virtual environment. Okay. Then we activate the virtual environment. Once we have created the virtual environment, we activate it using env being the name of the environment, scripts /activate. Then start a new project. New project, the name of the project is my project. So Django admin, start project, new project, my project. So in any program, if they ask us to create a application, no, make sure that you start from this particular command, that is Django admin, start project, name of that project, change the directory to that project, and then you can like run python my server dot run the development server, that is python manage.py run server. So when we do this, we'll see output indicating the development server is running. So we can open the browser and navigate through this URL. So we can see that Django project's default landing page is reached. Next we have, after this, we have to create a project, create an application, right? Project is created, my project. Now I'll create an application. So Pulse, okay. So python manage.py start app Pulse is the application name. Now I visit the code editor, VS Code I'm using. So I open the folder, select the PyLab folder in which we have created. So inside that I have Pulse being the application name. We have following laid out, that is init.py, then we have admin.py, apps.py, migrations init.py, models.py, test.py, and view.py. So now I select view and write the Python code. So to select view, I click on this view part, then we have the page. So here I can write whatever the Python code is and save it. After that, I create the URL configuration in Pulse directory, create a file called urls.py. So under this only app/urls.py, and I write the URL to perform mapping URLs to the views part. Then after saving these two, again in the settings part I need to update, right? So after updating in the settings part, settings URL also, I'll run python manage.py run server. So this is how like the basic creation of a project, creation of an application, and execution of project and application works. So if they ask this in exam, you should write all these steps and explain it accordingly. To understand, we'll look into a Hello World program. So in this module, if they ask us to write example for MVC architecture or explain views part or anything, no, just make sure you write this. Okay, so in Pulse, same being the application name and views.py, I write from django.http import http response. I am importing http response. So we are defining a function that is index, and request is the input. So along with that, we have return http response. This response, the returning response would be this particular text, that is hello world. So to call the view, we need to map it to a URL, and for that we need URL configuration. So we create in our Pulse directory, we create a URL. Okay, so Pulse/URL. Here we write from Django.url import path. We are importing the path. Along with that, Django from .import views. Now we'll update the we'll specify the URL part. URL patterns is equal to path, and here we have open in the bracket we write views.index. From the views we are accessing it, right? And the name is equal to index. Here we are again specifying the name of that particular view part. Okay. Next we have that particular function. Okay. Next step is to point the root URL at pulse.url module. So in my site/urls.py, add an import from django.urls.include and insert an include function in URL pattern list. So we have it as this. So in my site/urls.py, I get it as from django.contrib import admin. So I'm importing the admin part. Along with that, I should include the path also. No. So I'll have import path comma include. I'll write URL is equal to path pulse include pulse.url. Along with that, the admin part would remain as it is, admin/admin.site.urls. So here include function allows referencing other URL configurations. So when Django encounters include part, it chops off whatever part of URL matched up to that particular point and sends the remaining string to included URL configuration for further processing. So the main idea is to make it easy for plug and play URLs. Then we execute the command by saying python manage.py run server. We have the URL, we have the URL generated here. When we click that, we get the output as hello world. So this was about hello world program. Okay, let's further look into the next topic we have is mapping URLs to views. So in Django, URL configuration acts as a table of contents. So URL configuration acts as table of contents for our Django website. So it maps URLs to view functions, instructing Django on which code to execute when a specific URL is accessed. So when we generate a project, Django -admin.py start project, the script automatically generates a URL configuration file name urls.py. This will be in settings part, we know that. So this file will have the necessary configuration to map URLs to view. So next, we import necessary modules from Django URL configuration infrastructure. That is, typically we import all objects from Django configs.url.defaults. So this import will include patterns function, which is used to define URL pattern. So we take a base URL, that is empty string, as its first argument. This is the empty string. So URL is equal to patterns empty string. So the result is stored in a variable called URL pattern here. Okay. So to map specific URL to a view function, we make use of regular expression, string, or add the corresponding view function in the tuple. So to map hello URL to hello view function, we first import it. That is from mysite.views import hello. That's what we did in the previous hello program also, right? We imported the path, right? Then URL is equal to pattern. This is the empty string, the base URL which we are taking. Then hello $, hello. This is the name we are specifying here. So this tells Django that any request to hello URL should be handled by hello view function. So here we make use of the regular expressions. So this symbol represents that the asserts start of string. So here we have the symbol that asserts start of the string. Hello slash we have is to match the literal string, and $ is to end the particular string. So this was about mapping URLs to views. So again, if they ask an example to write, make sure you write the hello world program. Next we have types of errors in Django. So Django can encounter various errors during development and deployment. The first one is template errors. So it occurs when Django encounters issues processing the template files. So this could be due to syntax error in the HTML template, or there could be undefined template variables or problems with the template tags itself. So this was about template errors. Then we have the view errors. So the problem with Python code in view function can arise to view errors. So this could include the syntax errors or exceptions not handled properly, or it could be issues with the logic we have implemented. Then we have the URL resolution errors. So Django cannot find matching URL pattern for requested URL. So that's when this type of error can occur. So might happen because of mistake while typing the URL patterns. Again human error. So incorrect regular expression or conflict between URLs are mapped. So because of this, URL resolution errors occur. Then you have the database errors. Database errors means when the Django is interacting with database, there might be errors because of wrong credentials or invalid SQL syntax or problem with the database schema itself. Then you have the server errors. That is the entire misconfiguration or any memory issues or any permission issues and all. So in order to debug the Django errors, we can follow the tips. That is, consult error messages as it gives detailed info and understand the nature of errors. So if you have seen the error page, here the type of error would be specified, and in the bottom a particular explanation would be given what sort of error it is and how to trace the clues. Okay. That was about first point. Second we have is to utilize Django debug mode. So it provides extra debugging information and aids to identify errors during development itself. Then to check the Django documentation, again we can use debuggers like PyCharm and PDB. So this was about errors in Django. If they ask, make sure you write these 5 points. Along with that you write this, how to debug the errors. Okay. Next we have is this part, how Django processes a request. So again, these are all theory questions. No, they could be asked for 5 marks. Okay. So theory, and if there are any diagrams, make sure you draw the diagrams also. So when we run the command python manage.py run server, it imports a file called settings.py from the same directory. We know this. So this file contains all sorts of optional configurations for this particular Django instance. But most important setting is root URL conf. So this tells Django which Python module should be started as URL config for this particular website. So when request comes, for example, a time to Django, it loads the URL config pointed to by the root URL config setting, and then it checks each URL pattern in the URL config in order until it finds that the one particular URL which you are searching, like time. If time is found, after finding the matched URL, it calls the view function associated with it and then passes the HTTP request object as its first parameter to the function. So the view function is responsible for returning the HTTP response. So from browser, HTTP model Python handler, and here HTTP request, we have a request middleware. From this, if it is found, we go further, that is URL config. From there, if view is found, we come to the view part, view middleware, and then come to the view part. Now from the view, whatever HTML code we have specified would be we'll look into that, and after that a response would be generated, that is exception middleware. So if view is not found, view exception handler, then we directly provide the exception. After this, we provide a response through the middleware and back to the Python handler. So that is how here we generate the HTTP response. So if asked how does the Django process a request, make sure you draw this diagram and explain it. It is pretty simple topic, right? You can explain it in your own words. Next we have URL config and loose coupling. This is again a pretty important topic. It could be asked for 10 marks also. So starting, we have in Django, URL config and loose coupling go hand in hand as a way to create modular and maintainable web applications. So understanding the definition of loose coupling, it is a software design principle that emphasizes on minimizing the interdependence between different parts of code. So there are cases where a particular code is interdependent on the other code, right? But loose coupling, its aim is to minimize the interdependence between different parts of code. This means that change made to one section of the code should not be affected on the other section of the code. Or in the other words, if I make change in this particular code, there should be minimal or no changes on this particular code. So that's what is said here. This means change made in one section should be minimal or no impact on the other section. So Django URL config are Python files that define how URLs map to the Django functions. We know URL configuration. So this separation between URL definition and view implementation promotes loose coupling in following ways. Suppose you want to change URL of a particular view, like from articles to blog/articles. You can simply modify the URL configuration without touching the view part, right? So this is we all can do this pretty easily. Like if we look at the hello program, we can easily change its name. In the def part, we can easily change, right? Suppose you want to modify a functionality within a view function, we can update the code in view function without affecting the URL pattern. So if I have to modify the view function, I can again change it without affecting the URL pattern. Suppose hello program is there, right? Hello world is there. I can write hello world vtupadhai. So by changing the view part also, there is no impact on the URL section, right? So this allows us to evolve the view logic without breaking the URL mapping. Again, understood. So a simple function can be mapped to multiple URLs. That is, we are promoting the code reuse part. So looking at the benefits of loose coupling, so it is like independent changes to URL and views can be made, so makes code easier to maintain, debug and modify. Yeah. Then we can easily add new functionalities without affecting the existing URLs. Flexibility. So both URLs and views can be tested in isolation, simplifying the isolation process. And we have scalability, that is, I can add n number of new functions into the view part, or I can modify the URL structure. Then we have the reusability, that is, a single function can be mapped to multiple URLs. So again, promoting the reusability, code reuse part. So URL configurations and loose coupling is a pretty easy topic. If it is asked for 10 marks, no, make sure you write this much, all this content. Along with this, you explain the hello world program, doing necessary changes. For this particular part, do one change in the URL part, and for this particular part, change in the view part. Okay. Looking at the wildcard patterns, again, important question, 10 marks. So it is a powerful tool for handling a wide range of URLs with a single definition. So we know wildcard patterns. So these are the URL patterns. URL patterns are generated using the regular expressions. So this wildcard patterns, it is like a powerful tool used to handle a wide range of URLs with single definition. That is, it is important to use them properly and understand its potential drawbacks. Wildcard patterns are created using the repath function, repath function from Django.urls, and typically includes .star notation. So this notation matches any number of characters in the URL path. So the advantages for this is conciseness. So they simplify the URL definition for handling many similar URLs. So if I put .star, this means that any number of characters could be matched for the URL path. Then you have the flexibility. So a single pattern can accommodate various URL structures. That's what we have looked in the definition part. Looking at the drawbacks, so it is less readable because they will have complex regular expressions. So if they are not created properly, then it might match unintended URLs. if I have to match views.py, it might match to, suppose if I have to match a particular URL, if it is not defined properly, I might end up matching some other page. Okay. Further looking at the alternative options, so multiple specific patterns for better maintainability. Either we can use multiple specific patterns for each of the URL, or name captured groups can be used within the wildcard pattern to capture specific paths of URL while avoiding any overboard matches. So alternate options of wildcard URLs could be multiple specific patterns, or it could be name capture groups being used. So when to use the URL pattern? So we use them sparingly and only when a single wildcard pattern offers a clear benefit in terms of conciseness and readability compared to the multiple specific patterns. So if we need to capture specific parts of URL, employ named capture groups, we can make use of wildcard patterns. So wildcard patterns, again being a theory topic, you can write it easily. Next we have is, what are the best practices for wildcard patterns? So clarity over convenience. So the code has to be clear and maintainable code. Then we have documentation patterns. So we have to document the wildcard pattern to understand its purpose and potential limitations. Then what are the alternatives? That is to evaluate if we have to check if specific patterns or name captured groups can achieve more maintainable code than the wildcard pattern. Looking at the regular expressions, if you have dot, it is any character, /d means single digit, or if I have to include 3 digits, I can write d and include 3. Then uppercase, lowercase, I hope you know this. And for selecting the case sensitive characters, I can go from A to Z again. We have studied all this in Python lab, right? Then we have plus, that is one or more previous expression. And we have these symbols depicting one or more characters until the forward slash. Then if you have question mark, it is 0 or 1 previous expression. If you have star, it is 0 or more of previous expressions. Then this hyphen, this depicts the range between 1 to 3. Next, we have the program, that is Django application, that displays current date and time in the server. So we have Python manage.py start app. We are creating an application, my app. So assuming that we are making use of let's say my project. Okay, under my project directory we are creating a application, my app. So for in views part, I have to write the logic, right? So from django.http import the http response. Then I define from date time, I am importing date time function. Okay, so define current date time being the function name, and request. What am I requesting? Now is a variable. I am obtaining the current date and time. Okay, date time dot now specifies that particular instance. This pre-built library, from datetime library, I am importing this function and I'm using it here. So now in now variable, the current date and time would be stored. Now again in HTML body, I am giving the title as current date and time, and here I am specifying the now variable, and along with that slash body slash HTML, I'm closing it, and I'm returning a response as HTML. As in HTML, this entire HTML part was stored, right? So I'm returning HTML. So this was about the views part. Looking at the URLs part, from django.urls import the path, and I'm importing the views also. And after that, URL path is equal to, I'm updating the URL so that it has to be current date time. This function name current date time, from views.current date time. I'm accessing this from views.current date time. Name should be current date time. So again specifying the URL pattern name. Okay. Next we have, now that I'm done with the URL part, next I'll move into settings/url.py. So here the django.contrib import admin, I'm importing admin. Along with that, I'm importing path and include function. So we have seen in the previous hello world program, right? So the same logic applies here. URL pattern is equal to path, admin would be there as it is. Along with that, I'm also adding my path of the project which I have created, that is my app, and include my app.urls. My app URLs are also included here. After that, Python manage.py. So when I run this program, I'll get the current date and time as the output. Next, this was to display current date and time. Next we have date and time 4 hours ahead and before, that is offset value. So here offset value, if it is 10, entire program is same, just here offset hours value only we should change. So my app, again I've created an application with the name my app. In views part, I'll be writing django.http import http response Django datetime import datetime and time delta. So I'm importing datetime, along with that I'm also importing time delta. So define datetime with offset, the function name, and request. So I'm providing a request. Now is equal to datetime dot now. So I'll get the present date time here. Next, offset hours is equal to 4. Offset hours is a variable. This has to be in the next line. Okay. So for FHA is equal to now plus time delta, and here I will be specifying the offset value. That is, hours is equal to offset hours. Similarly, 4 hours before, for 4 hours before FHB is equal to now minus time delta, hours is equal to offset minus offset hours, specifying this value. So further, once I have got the FHA and FHB value along with now value, I'll provide the HTML output, that is HTML body, defining it as current date, and I'm providing the output now. And next, I have 4 hours ahead. I'll be providing FHA, 4 hours before FHB, and closing this HTML part, I'll be returning HTTP response HTML. So I'm done with my view part. In my apps, in my app /url.py, again import the path, views, path, date time with offset, defining the whatever the function I'm calling it here, mapping it here, right? Views.datetime with offset, again calling it here, and here I'll be specifying the name and closing it. And in settings part, it's again the same. Here python manage.py run server. So this was about the first module. Here I've tried covering all the important topics. If you have any doubts, do let me know in the comments, and stay tuned. I'll be uploading second module, third module soon. So yeah, thank you.